In this series of videos, we are watching how to visualize data and create narratives using Tableau. In our last video, we got an overview of the navigation within Tableau and we imported a data set, which is the sample superstore data set. We're now going to use this data set to create some simple charts. As we discussed in our last video, Tableau provides 24 base charts from where other charts can be created. We'll first study all of these base charts, and then in more advanced areas, we are going to use these base charts to create uh, additional charts. The 84 base charts are available over here under Show Me. We'll take the first chart, which is kind of a text table, like a pivot table. Normally, we will not use this kind of chart so much. In fact, it's not a chart, but it's a good way to understand how some of the fundamental features of Tableau. So let's say we want to create a chart of sales for different, let's say, categories. So here you see there are categories of product, and I want to create a table of showing the sales for different categories. We discussed in our last video that all visualizations essentially are a summarization, and we are summarizing certain measures against certain dimension. Here we are summarizing sales, which is a measure, is a dimension of category. So if you look at the data set, different categories of products, and we're trying to see what is the sales that happen for each category. If you want to create a simple table for this, all that we need to do is drag this category over here into the column, and you can see already a blank table is created. Drag the sales into the rows. Now, by default, you see that Tableau has selected a column chart, which probably is the most obvious chart that should be created for this type of summarization. However, we will do column charts and bar charts at a later point of time. We want to go back to our table, and if you want to do that, all that you have to do is to click on table over here, and you see the table is back. We'll also notice that Tableau made certain changes on its own. Instead of having the sales in the rows which we had initially put, it has put sum of sale into this marks area under text, and we had put category into the column, and instead just moved the category into the rows, which is pretty obvious because the categories actually are in the rows. Now, you do not really need to bother about this arrangement. As long as you know that certain dimensions and certain measures that you put in the columns and rows, if some changes need to be made, Tableau will do it on its own, as it did in this particular case. You really don't have to remember that which one I should put in rows and which one I should put in columns. And in this particular case, sales I should put in text. Tableau will do that arrangement automatically once it's in the chart. Of course, if you remember that, that's great. But we'll soon see that with so many charts, it's not possible to remember all the positions. You should do it intuitively, what appears most likely. Now, there are multiple other ways by which this chart could be created. Another way is the one that I'm showing now. Now, if I want to remove these chart entirely from the sheet, all that I have to do is just drag this and drop it back into this empty area over here, and drag the measures and drop it back in the empty area over here. The chart will be gone. So usually if you have to change anything, this is something that you can do. Else there is also a back arrow, which basically is an undo. So if I want to do a back, if you do a back arrow, it will undo whatever I have done. So let's look at the some other ways by which same thing could be done. So we had put category into the columns. We have found this. We can also put text over. Sorry, you can put sales, and drag it into this, and something like this will come up. Now again, as you can see, Tableau has made some changes automatically. We don't want this change. We want to go back to columns and rows, and here we are. So initially these things may seem little unintuitive, and that's how Tableau is, because the visualization of the rows and the columns and the marks is not very clear. But with use of Tableau, these things will become more and more obvious. Okay. So do not try to memorize where you are putting the dimensions and measures point to point. Once you start using these charts, automatically come to know about how to manipulate these columns and rows and the marks. Third way, which probably you would have got by now, is put the category into rows. And now that you have put category into rows, it has come like this horizontally, because you have said that it's in the rows. And now put the sales in the text over here. Again, it creates this time it is created a bar chart. Bar charts are horizontal, column chart is vertical, which is probably the best chart to do for this particular set of data. But at this point of time, we want a table. We'll switch back to table. Here we are. The third option is put category into the rows and sales. By now, you would have figured out that if I put sales into the text, it should come in this table, and you can do that straight up instead of changing the chart again. So we have a simple pivot table, kind of a pivot table in Tableau, which shows the three categories that we now see the usefulness of summarization. If I had looked at the full data, it was very difficult to figure out that what are the different categories and how much say each of these categories are having. It is very difficult to aggregate the mentally. So here we now have each of these three categories: furniture, office supplies, and technology, and the sales in numbers. It is not still a visualization, it's still a number showing 742, 719, and 836. Now you can, obviously, you may have some questions at this point of time. For example, what is the currency of sales case? Now, we don't know the currency because our data did not have the currency. Let us assume the currency is US dollar. And let us say that we want to show that the sales have happened in US dollars. How do I do that? There are a few ways of doing that. And I'll explain those methods, the pros and cons of them. The first method is, if you go over here, you will see an option of format. Now in Tableau, if you right click on any dimension and measure, there are a lot of configurable options. So if you have to look for configurable options, one option is just right click, and you are not very sure where it is. You just right click on the dimension or measure. Another place where you see configurable options is over here on the top menu, and we'll see some of the configurable options here as well. But as of now, this is the configurable option, format. The moment you see format, it is coming over here. And it's telling me that what is the format in which I want to show the data. So here it says that the data is in form of number. Okay. However, we want the data in the form of currency. What we need to do is uh, go to currency standard, and in currency standard, you see by default it has taken as Indian rupees. I'll explain later on very soon why it has taken Indian rupees. But this time we want to have it in US dollars because probably our data, and we saw that data is from sales in the US. So we'll have it in US dollars. So we'll change this to English United States. And this again slightly unintuitive because in most of that this kind of uh, packages will expect the currency to come in dollars or rupees or pounds, etc. But here it is, you are defining the locale, okay, United States. And how did it get this dollar symbol? After you define the locale, you go to the currency custom. And here there are a few other things that you can set. One of them, of course, what is the prefix? So because you have set the locale as United States, the prefix is automatically taken as dollar. You could have directly come to the currency custom without going to the locale. In that case, you have to manually put this dollar symbol. We also see the decimal places over here and how the negative values will be displayed and what is the display unit. Now, the decimal places, as you can see here, it's two places of decimal. Normally, the currency, two places of decimal is the minimum denomination of the currency. However, here the sales values are pretty large, and for data, for the visualization of the data and for summarization of the data, we don't need to be that accurate because I don't need to know the sales to the cent in order to understand which category is selling the highest. So I can put the decimal places to 0. In fact, if I put just 2, the number becomes too large and probably that is distracting my attention. This way, I am much better off. In fact, I'll be much better off if I make the display unit in thousands rather than the full number. So now I have a better view of the sales because the numbers have been aggregated into higher level of display unit in thousands, and there are no decimals, and it's easier for me to visualize that which category of product is having the highest sale. If there is any negative value, then it will be shown under bracket. If I want any other way to be shown, for example, minus or minus before the dollar sign, minus after the dollar sign, I can do that. So I have got this sales figure over here, and this time now it is shown in dollars, and this is one way of putting the currency in the Tableau chart. However, this method has a little bit of a problem. Let me explain you what the problem is. Let us assume that I want now to create another table which shows the sales by, let's say, segment. I do the same thing as I did last time. I put segment in the rows and sales in the text. Now that we know that this is one way of doing it. Now what happens is that this time again, the sales is in numbers, not in currency. This means that every time I create a sheet, I have to change the currency to dollars, or the sales value to dollars, which is an extra work for me. I don't want to do that because Tableau should understand that the sales will be dollars for all the sheets. How do I avoid that? So the second option, and which is a better option in this case, is to change the unit of measure of sales for the all the sheets. How do I do that? Instead of changing it over here, go and change the unit of measure of sales in the left panel over here, which shows the fields of the table. Click over here, and here you have something called default properties. And in the default properties, you have something called number format. Go to the number format and do the same thing that we did. Currency locale is US, decimal place is 0, display thousands. That's it. Now you see what happens, that all the sheets, if I create another sheet where I will put maybe sales by subcategory. Now I did not have to do anything for this particular sheet. Automatically, sales with dollar has with the dollar symbol has come. Let us go back to our first sheet. Now, before that, before I do the next thing, there is a third method of changing the currency, which I don't usually recommend to do, and I explain why I say so. On top here in the file, there is something called workbook locale, and in the workbook locale, right now it is set at automatic user locale, and this is the reason why by default it took rupees. Where is the automatic user locale being selected? It is selected based on the settings of your operating system. So when your operating system was installed, a location was given and it's taken from that location. That's why by default it took India. Now I could change these to not India, but US. In that case, I don't have to even change any other currency for any other measure. For example, very soon we'll be using profit also, and we need to set the unit of measure for profit as well. But if I don't want that, if I want that all units of measure should be in dollars as far as which are for currency, then I could have set this to locale equal to US. But that is not a very good idea because there may be data which can have multiple locales in the same sheet. In that case, if you set it as a specific locale, it will create problems because it will take only that particular locale. So this is something that I normally do not recommend to use. We are happy with setting it up at the workbook level, where every workbook will have dollars as far as sales is concerned. But yes, if we next time you have to add profit, I have to add. I have to again change the unit of measure. So let us see how we add profit now. So what we want to do is we want to add profit as another column in the table. By now you would have realized that if sales is coming in the text, what happens if I put profit also in the text? It comes over here. However, you see that this is not really serving my purpose. because this is not really what we wanted. We wanted uh, sales and profit to be shown as two different columns. That's not what happened. What it did was it took both sales and profit in one cell, like equivalent to a cell in Excel, and put both of them together. And that's not what I wanted. Of course, the other thing that I need to do is to change this profit to dollars and the display units. So let's do that first, so that our profit is in dollars and uh, in the same display unit as sales, so that we can compare, and then we'll fix this problem. Like last time, we won't change the profit from here, because we know if we change it for here, if we're using profits in some other place, again I have to change. So instead of that, I'll go over here and change the profit dimension from here. Go to here, number format. First, we'll set the locale as US. Don't need the decimal places. We'll make this 1000. Okay. But this is not the format in which we want the sales and profit to come. We want sales and profit to come side by side as two different columns. We'll take this out. And now we'll go back to our previous method where we had put the sales in the columns. I'm not going to change this bar chart now. I will now put profit beside sales in the same column. Something happened in the bar chart. We'll ignore this for the time being. We're not developing a bar chart now. And now we change this to table. And now see what happens, that sales and profit has come side by side. We want sales first and profit later. That also we can do. We see over here that suddenly the sales and profit has appeared. It was in the column, but it has vanished from the column. Something else has come up, and sales and profit has come over here and under this box of measured values. First, let us change this, and then I'll explain what exactly happened over here. So we'll drag the profit down below sales. Here we are, at least we have got our table right, we have the sales and profit, but we really didn't understand why it was moved from the columns. Now, if you see, what has happened is that in the column, Tableau has put something called measure names. If you remember, in our first lecture, we said that Tableau has two calculated or derived or automatic dimensions and measures. One is measure names and one is measure values. So what it has done, it has converted a measure, which is sales and profit, and taken the measure names, sales and profit, as dimensions and put that in the column. By doing so, sales and profit, the names of sales and profit has come in the column. The measure names, it has created a dimension by measure names, which is showing sales and profit over here. And it has also put measure names over the filter over here, so that only sales and profit shows over here and no other measure names show over here, because there may be other measure names here. Where did the values go? The values against this measure name has gone to this measure values, which essentially means the values for the dimension sales, which is now a measure name. Now sales has become, the measure name has become a dimension, and the values of those dimension is other measures. Okay, a little confusing to understand, but you can understand from, if you think of it as the names of the columns being considered as dimensions and the values against those columns considered as the measures. And these measure values have come to the text. Do you really need to remember this? The answer is no. This is the internal logic of Tableau, and Tableau will handle this internal logic. What I explained is only for our own understanding. When you are building the chart, you really don't need to remember this. You really don't need to put measure names in the column and measure values in the text. We will do exactly the way I did. That means we'll put sales and profit in the column, and the rest will be taken care of by Tableau. We also want, in such kind of situation, some kind of total to come. I want to know what is the total sales and what is the total profit. So that's a very obvious requirement in any aggregation. I need to know the total. Where do I get the total? In order to get the total again, you need to go to analysis and go to total. Now, this is where it may feel slightly unintuitive to use Tableau, because if those of you are used to Excel, you know that something like a column total or a row total is very simple to do. You just go to the cell down below and you click the sum icon and it totals. But here is not like that. You have to know that the total is on top under analysis, and here you have to calculate the total. But over a period of time, you'll get used to this. So that we want to show the column total. The row total is not very relevant over here because row total is profit and sales. So we don't want to sum up profit and sales. We want to sum up profit and sum up sales separately. You'll get the column total. So you'll see column grand totals. And you see you have the sum of sales and the profit. Now it's possible that if I want to change the name of the grand total and just say total instead of grand total, we can do that as well. What we need to do is click over here, right click over here and choose format. On the left hand side, you'll see the format for this particular field. And here down below, you'll see the label saying grand total. What we need to do is to change this label to total. If I do that, let's see, get back to. If we want to make this table bigger, I can change this table to entire view. In this case, it really doesn't look good, but in some cases, this will be required. So let me change it back to standard. Else, you can also do fit width. That means it will fit to the width of the sheet, or it can also fit the height of the sheet, and otherwise fit the view. So for now, I'll leave it as standard. I can change the name of this sheet, showing if I double click over the name, it will, a text box will open up, and I can just say summary of sales, or let me just say sales and profit category. Okay. So I have made one simple table for sales and profit using the category. I'll also name this sheet because later on, once a large number of sheets are created, this might create a confusion. So I'll say sales and profit by category. The table, so let me call this a table because it could have been. And as of now, we'll not need the sheet 2 and sheet 3. I just used it for demonstrating you the how to set up the currency and the few other options. So let me just delete them, okay, because I don't want too many sheets to be crowding my workbook. It's very important that you keep the data very clean for the purpose of visualization. That is one of the important things that you must learn if you are a data scientist or a business analyst or a data engineer. Cleanness of the data visually, actually, as well as visually is very important. So we'll leave the sheet like this. The last thing before we close this particular video is how do we save this? Now, here, if you're using a Tableau Enterprise Edition, Tableau will allow you to download this Tableau, this workbook into a Tableau file, and that file can be uploaded. However, since we are using the Tableau Public Edition, which is the free edition, we have to save this in the public portal of Tableau. That doesn't mean that you have to make this visualization visible to everybody, but it does mean that it is there in the cloud with Tableau. That's the only way to save it. So obviously, if you are using enterprise data, which you do not want to store in a third-party cloud, this is not a good option and should not be used. But since we are learning, and this is an open data set, everybody knows about this data set, we have to save it in this format, because otherwise, next time we want to use this, we have to start from the beginning. Now, in order to do this, I have to log on to Tableau Public. In the last video, I had explained that you should create an ID in Tableau Public. So let us first log on to Tableau Public, and then we will save this. So we have logged on to Tableau Public, and let us say save Tableau Public as, because it's the first time you're saving the sheet. So we will say, give it a name. If you have not logged in, then it will ask you for the user ID and password. So let me just log in, Tableau Public. I did not log in. If you have logged in already, then you may not need to log in again. It is asking me to give the name of this workbook. So it says Sample Superstore Training Video. The name, make it more clear, Training Video Workbook. Is publishing in Tableau Public. Is opening the Tableau Public, and whatever we did over here is now available in the Tableau. Now, normally, if you have multiple sheets, this will show only the sheet that from where you have published. However, if you want to see all the sheets, you need to go to Edit. Now, once you go to Edit, you will see the Tableau that we were using in the desktop version. The same Tableau is available. In other words, whatever we were doing in the desktop version, we can also do in the web version. However, because the web version, you have to work on the portal, and hence you will require good internet connection to work with. So that's why I always recommend that you work on the desktop version and then publish in the web version. However, if you insist you're more comfortable in the web version, you can do the same thing as we did in the desktop version over here. Now from here, I can publish the workbook. If I publish the workbook, it will be available to everybody to view. I don't want to publish it right now. However, I want to download and save this file, because once I close the video, I should be able to retrieve the file for the next session and use it from there. So in order to do that, I have to go to download over here. And here you have the option to download in so many different formats, including PDF and PowerPoint. However, I recommend not to use PDF and PowerPoint for Tableau, because if you use PDF and PowerPoint, then it becomes static. The data becomes static. Later on, we'll see how to use filters and various other ways to make the data dynamic. That option is not available when you're using. So it is better to uh, display or project the data from Tableau itself. I'll show you how to project the data from Tableau itself, especially if you're projecting it to an audience. For now, I want to download this to a Tableau workbook. So when you say download to Tableau workbook, it will ask me the name and whichever folder you want to save your file. You can save this file over here, over the folder, and the type of the file is Tableau package workbook or TWPX. So make sure that the file is saved as a TW with a TWPX extension. So let us save the file in our, we have saved the file in our local directory. And now what we are going to do, we are going to import the file into the Tableau workbook again and continue the working from here. Before that, let me also show you how to display these charts in case you are displaying it to an audience. You can go over here where there is an option to display the full screen. When you click over here, you see only the chart is displayed and other widgets used for creating the chart is not visible. So if you're presenting to a group of audience, then you can adopt this mode rather than going for a PowerPoint or a PDF. Let us now close this Tableau workbook, assuming that our work is done, and then reopen Tableau. And in this time, we are going to import the TWPX file. So let us first close this this instance of the workbook, and we'll see how to import the file. So I have closed the Tableau workbook instance that I had. It's a new instance. It also tells me what is the recent workbook that I did, and I can open directly from here. But assume that this is not available. I'll just close this and I'll show you how to open it from that file that is there in your folder. This time we will not go to Microsoft Excel, because now we are not importing only the Excel file. We need to import the entire work that we have done, including the charts that we already made. So here I will go and say file open. And when we say file open, we will take the file from the folder that we have already, where we have already stored. So let me pick it up from the folder is already stored. I open the Tableau file from the folder where I've stored the file, and I now get back all the work that I've done so far, and I can continue from here.